The National Treasury has published draft legislation for a new two-part retirement system that will come into effect on the 1st of March 2024. This system allows members to be able to access a portion of their retirement savings, their retirement fund, before they retire. And I want to discuss how much of that can you access while you're still working, how the new two-part system works, and different scenarios as well. This is what I want to discuss in this video today, so let's get into it. So how does this two-part retirement system work? Essentially what that means is that from the 1st of March 2024, a third of your contributions towards your retirement fund will go to a savings part and 2/3 will go to a retirement part. And a member can make withdrawals from the savings part once a year that will be taxable. The 2/3 that will go to retirement part will then be used when you retire to buy an annuity. The two-part system acknowledges the high unemployment rate that the country currently faces and also acknowledges that many people don't have enough savings. So what people would end up doing is to resigning from their job or getting divorces or things like that so that they can access their retirement fund. So what the Treasury has decided to do is to make it possible for people to be able to access their retirement savings before they retire, hence this new system. So it's very important for us to understand what happens to the retirement up until the 28th of February 2024, and then how will our retirement be treated from 1 March 2024. Experts say that by allowing members to access a portion of their retirement fund while they're working, this reduces the burden on people, and it's a little bit better than people actually retiring and accessing all of their funds, and also preserving a majority of their retirement funds up until they retire. But remember, this is better, not preferable. Preferably, what is better for people to do is to keep their retirement savings as they are and to wait until they retire to use them. But because people are under financial stress and distress, many people have been cashing out their retirements to access their funds. So the better alternative is to allow people to access a portion of their funds and keep the majority for their retirement, rather than allowing people, or rather than people cashing in all their investments by resigning or by getting divorced or something like that. Under the new system, the Board of Trustees has to create 3 separate components. So there's 3 separate parts essentially that we need to talk about and that they need to account for. That being the portion before the 1 March 2024, and then the 2 parts after 1 March 2024. The 3 parts that we essentially need to understand are the retirement part, the savings part, and the vested part. The savings component, or the savings part, allows people to be able to access a third of their retirement from the 1st of March 2024, and this will be taxable portion that they'll be allowed to access once a year. Then you have the retirement portion, retirement part. This is the 2/3 that will be kept aside for your retirement, and this 2/3 will be used to buy an annuity when you retire. Another part that we need to talk about, component as well, that we can speak about, is the vested component. So this is the part of the portion of your retirement up until the 29th of February 2024, and that is the vested component. So remember that this act comes into effect on the 1st of March 2024, which essentially your retirement fund will be split into 2. So that's 1/3 into the savings part and 2/3 into the retirement part, and then there's the other portion, the vested part, which will be all of your savings up until the 29th of March 2024. So from the 1st of March 2024, this is how it's going to work. If you contribute, for example, 1,000 Rand towards your retirement fund, of that 1,000 Rand, 333 Rand, which is a third, goes into your savings part, and 2/3 of that, which is 666 Rand and some change, will go into the retirement part. Then you will have an opportunity once a year to access the savings part and you can access the savings pot when the balance is at 2,000 Rand. You can access this once a year, and this is added to your taxable income, and you'll be taxed on it as you are taxed when you get paid normally by your company. So under this new system, what they're trying to do is that they want at least a portion, a majority of people's retirement to be used and preserved up until they retire, and not to be accessed entirely when somebody retires. If you've got multiple retirement funds, for example, if you've got a company retirement fund and a personal retirement fund, you can then have annual withdrawals to each of these funds. So you'll be able to access the company withdrawal fund once per year, and also your personal retirement fund once per year as well. Members can make tax-free transfers from their savings pot to the retirement pot whenever they feel like. This won't be subject to tax, and this is allowed. However, members cannot make withdrawals or transfers from the retirement fund into their savings pot. So when you decide to make a transfer from your savings to your retirement fund, you have to think really carefully, because you cannot take money out of your retirement pot towards your savings pot. And I think that's a good thing, because if you think about it, the point is that they want to preserve the retirement pot, as much of it as possible, for our retirement when we get to that age. So if people are allowed to make withdrawals out of the retirement pot, then it defeats the purpose and the reason for this legislation to begin with. So you can make from your savings to say, okay, I actually want to contribute more into my retirement pot, so that's allowed, and it won't be tax-free, but you will not be able to transfer from your retirement to your savings, because they want to make sure that the retirement pot is kept for your retirement. The vested component, or the vested part, which is the contribution that you've made up until 29 February 2024, is going to be subject to the current legislation and the current laws. So currently, if you do resign from your job, you are able to cash out your investment, cash out your retirement fund. That will still be the case for all of your funds up until 29 February 2024. And also currently as well, what you're able to do is to get a third. When you retire, you're able to get a third of your retirement fund as a cash lump sum, and 2/3 of that is required to pay an annuity that will then be paid to you every month up until whenever. So what happens to your funds from up until 29 February 2024 will remain as is, but the new legislation is from 1 March 2024. So any contributions from that day going forward, that's when the two-part method will come into place. Technically, from the 1st of March 2024, the savings pot is going to be from zero, because this legislation is from the 1st of 2024 going forward. So it will take time to build up the savings pot, and under this proposed legislation, what it's saying is that you'll be able to make withdrawals from this fund when it reaches 2,000 Rand, and this can take some time to do. In recognizing that many people may be wanting to access the savings pot immediately, but because your balance is zero at 1 March 2024, what they've decided to do is to allow people to transfer a portion from the vested pot. So remember, the vested pot is the balance up until the 29th of February 2024, a portion of that into the savings pot. And this is under certain circumstances. And this transfer is called seed capital. So what they've allowed people to do is to be able to transfer 10% of the fund balance, limited to 25,000 Rand, as at 1 March 2024. So for example, if a member has a balance of 100,000 Rand on 28 February 2024, they can transfer 10% of that from the vested pot to the savings pot. That will be 100,000 Rand times 10%, which is 10,000 Rand. They can transfer 10% of that into the savings pot, but this is limited to 25,000 Rand. So for example, if a person has 300,000 Rand in their fund at 29 February 2024, they can transfer 10% of that, which is 30,000 Rand. But because it's limited to 25,000 Rand, they can only transfer 25,000 Rand into their savings pot. So you can only transfer up until 25,000 Rand from the vested pot, which is your balance as at 29 March 2024, to the savings pot on 1 March 2024. Any withdrawal from the savings pot will be subject to tax. So this will be added to your taxable income every year and subject to the marginal tax. Remember that this is actually for emergencies rather than lifestyle. So the reason why this proposed legislation is coming into place, or they want this to come into place on 1 March 2024, is for people to access a portion of their retirement fund for emergencies, but not for lifestyle. So remember that if you do withdraw and you do use this two-part system to make withdrawals from your savings pot, this will be added to your taxable income and will be subject to tax. Under the current legislation or the current system right now that we're living under, if you make a withdrawal from your retirement fund, this is taxed from the withdrawal tax tables. So it's not added to your taxable income per se, but there's a table that SARS issues that then taxes your withdrawal from the retirement fund, as opposed to it being added to your taxable income, as is going to be the case moving forward. So what happens if you are retrenched? So the current balance up until the retirement fund, up until 29 February 2024, will be fully accessible, and also so will the savings part. So the retirement part is still under review, and this will be dealt with in the second phase of this new legislation. So as I suppose new information comes out and new updates come out, I will be making videos on that when the legislation changes and what the final verdict will be. Then they'll tell us what exactly happens to the retirement portion when a person retires, is retrenched going forward. This new system will apply to pension fund and provident funds, and also mostly retirement annuities, except for legacy retirement annuities. These are retirement annuities sold by life insurance companies with additional features, such as universal life policies with life and lump sum disability cover. Also remember, guys, to please also do your own research and make sure you understand the legislation for yourself, and also speak to your financial advisor. This video is for information purposes only and not meant to be financial advice. What happens if you're 55 years or older? If you're contributing to a provident fund and you are 55 years or older on 1 March 2021, you can decide to contribute to the new pot system or not. Such a member could opt to continue making contributions into their vested pot until they either retire from or leave the fund they were a member of on 1 March 2021. Continued contributions to the vested component or vesting pot means that they will not be able to contribute to the savings pot or the retirement pot. If a member decides to rather go and do the two-part system, then their contributions will go to the savings pot or the retirement pot, but no contributions will be made towards their vested pot. The National Treasury has said that the amendments dealing with withdrawals from the retirement pot from a member that has been retrenched and doesn't have any other secondary source of income will be considered in the second phase of this legislation. So we just have to wait and see what they decide to do and how they decide to deal with situations where someone is retrenched and what happens to your retirement. Because I think the reason with this is because under this new legislation, what it means is that a person will not be able to access, from my understanding, my understanding and my research is that a person will not be able to access the retirement pot going forward. So 2/3 of the retirement fund contributions will not be able to be accessed. So now what happens if you're retrenched and you don't have another job to then transfer your retirement pot from one company to another? So what happens to that retirement part? So this is why there will be new legislations that will come into effect that will be dealing with those type of situations, because if you are retrenched and you've got no source of income, technically you do need that money to be able to survive for a couple of months. But if the law now says that you won't be able to access the 2/3 of the retirement fund going forward, then how are we going to deal with those situations? So this is why they're still deciding on how to deal with it and how best to cope in those kinds of situations. But ordinarily, in a normal case, if you're moving from one company to another, what this means is that 2/3, the retirement part, will be moved from one retirement fund to another retirement fund, but you will not be able to access that up until you retire. They have also decided that further measures will be considered so that the retirement liquidity is not affected. So they want to make sure by all accounts that even if they change the laws and things change, that the liquidity of the retirement funds still remains the same. And there's a lot of things that have to be considered, as is the case, because we're basically changing the way things are done now, and also involves like the retirement the companies that look after our funds, and it's also going to take a lot of work for us to be able to implement the system. And it also means that companies that do look after people's retirement funds basically have a couple of months to change the way they do things and change the way they account for things, and there's going to be a lot of discussions behind the scenes as well. That's what I suspect. We will have to see what happens with the legislations, but as I said, as more drafts and more proposed legislation comes out, I will be making videos on that to discuss what those what those changes will be and how we expect them to affect us. Thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.